In the morning, with the light of dawn appearing in the sky, and the capital city of Qatar, the capital of King Lubanar. The fiery sunshine fell from the sky, and there was a slightly eager atmosphere floating in the air. At this time, as the administrative center of the Lubanar kingdom, a large number of pedestrians were already walking on the streets of the royal city, but today, the entire royal city was, it seems, quite quiet. Because today is the opening day of the Mainland Elite Competition and the Northwest Region Selection Competition, which is held once every 10 years in mainland China. In order to ensure safety, the entire royal city is under martial law. Every street and alley in the royal city is patrolled by heavily armed soldiers, and no mistakes are allowed. After all, such a large event is attended by countless forces from the entire northwest of the continent. Any slightest incident may lead to international disputes, affecting the reputation of the Lubanar kingdom on the mainland. Groups of geniuses from all the major forces in the northwest were guided to gather towards the square in front of King Lubanar's palace. There would be strong men from the Twin Towers announcing the results of the selection. Rule. There are nearly 10,000 geniuses from the major forces in the northwest of the continent. This is a very large number. They come from various forces in the northwest. There are geniuses from large forces such as the Northwest Kingdoms, the Levi Alliance, the Thad Alliance, the Kingdom of Baiyue, and the Western Wilderness Tribe, as well as geniuses from some scattered small forces. Everyone here is considered to be the best in their respective countries, but on the big stage of the Lubanar Kingdom, their original advantage in their own territory has disappeared. Here, everyone is a genius, everyone is the pride of heaven, and everyone is outstanding. In the square in front of King Lubanar's palace, nearly 10,000 contestants gathered together at this moment. Their registration forms have all passed the review of the Twin Towers, and now will be the time for the strong men from the Twin Towers to officially announce the rules of the selection competition to them. Nearly 10,000 players gathered together, which was an extremely spectacular sight, and those at the front were naturally the players from the big powers. As the host, the Lubanar kingdom naturally ranked first, and among next to it are the powerful forces in the northwest such as the Western Wilderness Tribe and the Baiyue kingdom. Look, the one at the front of the team in the Lubanar kingdom is said to be the #1 genius in the Lubanar kingdom, Princess Dini Shah. It is said that she is only 27 years old and is already a 7th-level warrior. She is a low-level imperial spiritual master. It seems that the first place in this trial is hers. Tisk, that's not necessarily true. Did you see that the young man at the front of the Shihuang tribe's team is Shihuang? A rare genius in the tribe for hundreds of years, the royal family Temujin. He is 29 years old this year. He was already a 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual master 2 years ago. He once killed a thief in the Western Wasteland who is a low-level 7th-level imperial spiritual master is extremely powerful. The two you mentioned are good, but Lord Adkins of the Baiyue kingdom cannot be ignored. It is said that he has also reached the low-level 7th level. At the level of the imperial spirit master, one's achievements are extremely terrifying. It seems that the top 3 in this selection must be the 3 of them. I just don't know who among the 3 of them is the #1 genius in our northwest. The first genius, hey, you can't tell, maybe there are some peerless geniuses that we don't know about among so many people, so don't be careless. Peerless genius? Haha, stop joking. Okay, how can a genius be as powerful as Adkins? They have become 7th-level imperial spiritual masters before they were 30 years old. Even among the 4 major empires, they are absolutely amazing beings. If they work harder, for a moment, I'm afraid there's no hope of even becoming an 8th-level emperor spiritual master in this life. According to what you said, other forces such as the Levi Alliance and the Northwest Kingdoms do not have peerless geniuses? The Northwest Kingdoms? Haha, I asked about it and heard that this time the Northwest Kingdoms are quite powerful. There are 2. A strong man at the level of a famous spiritual master may barely be able to pass the test, but if he is a peerless genius, hey, it's not like I underestimated the Northwest countries. It would be strange if a peerless genius could emerge from that damn place. Among the crowd below, many well-informed players were whispering to each other. Dini Shah, Temujin, Adkins? In the crowd, Jason looked at the three people in front of the team. His originally calm face suddenly showed a hint of excitement at this moment. A 7th-level low-level emperor, spiritual master? I didn't expect that there would be such a person in the northwest of the mainland. It's interesting. A smile appeared on Jason's lips. In Jason's mind, what he originally wanted was to pass the mainland elite competition organized by the Twin Towers so that he could enter the Twin Towers for trials and training. As for qualifying for this trial, in his mind, with his strength, it was not a problem at all, but now, after learning that there were 3 masters of the Imperial Spiritual Master level in this trial, Jason couldn't help but feel excited. For this trial, he couldn't help but have a little expectation in his heart. Dong Chinchur, with a huge sound of gongs and drums, the crowd in the square fell silent instantly. A dozen figures walked slowly out of the palace of the Rubiner Kingdom and walked towards the high platform in front of the square. Walking at the front of the team were 3 old men with grey beards, and closely behind them were the team leaders from various major forces. Di Lin, Kokoli, and Leo were among them. As for Renault, did not show up today, but stayed in the mansion. Everyone, you are all geniuses from all over the Northwest. Regarding this selection competition, I think everyone already knows some of the most basic things. What I want to announce now is the location of this selection competition. After everyone arrived in front of the square, the leader, an old man, spoke directly without any greetings. The contestants on the square were all listening attentively, not daring to miss a word. This mainland elite selection is divided into 2 rounds. The first round is a survival trial. There are a total of 10,000 contestants from the Northwest participating in the selection. Depending on the region and place of origin of each contestant, we will completely break up the 10,000 of you, and then send to the Tiancay Mountains of the Rubiner Kingdom. Through a series of eliminations, the top 200 most outstanding players will be selected and will enter the next round of selection. Okay, I can now, this is probably the information given. The specific trial content and detailed rules will not be announced until you arrive at the Tiancay Mountains and before the trial. Now, everyone packs their bags and prepares to set off. What? Chapter 1: A round of trials in the Tiancay Mountains of the Rubiner Kingdom? Upon hearing the news, all the players in the field couldn't help being shocked when they knew about the Tiancay Mountains. The Rubiner Kingdom is located among many forces. It is not adjacent to the Spiritual Beast mountain range to the west, and there is nothing special inside the kingdom. The reason why it has become the leading force in the northwest of the continent is precisely because of the Tiancay mountain range. It is rich in spiritual energy, rampant in spirit beasts, and rich in spiritual materials. It is an excellent place for practice and exercise. This time, the departure was not initiated by the players on their own initiative. Instead, the representatives of the Twin Towers personally led the team, and the players were no longer allowed to move without permission. The trial site is thousands of miles away from the royal city of Qatar. We set out in the morning and rested at night. It was not until noon on the 3rd day that the large army arrived. Stretching mountains, with rushing streams running between the mountains, winding and circling, make this place look full of mystery. At the foot of the mountain, there is an open space, and nearly 10,000 players from all over the Northwest have already arrived. Okay, everyone, listen up. Next is the most important time for this selection. In this Tiancay mountain range, there is a kind of spiritual power crystal. Your purpose is to get as many as possible. Spiritual power crystal tablet. As he spoke, the old man turned his hand over, and in his palm, a golden crystal tablet with some complex patterns engraved on it appeared in front of Jason and the others. The crystal tablet was shaped like a flame, simple and strange. It sparkled in the sunlight, and as soon as it appeared, there was a strong aura floating in the air. The old man pointed at the golden crystal tablet and said, This is the spiritual power crystal tablet, and it is also the goal of your trip. In the Tian-Ke Mountains, there are many such spiritual power crystal tablets scattered in white, blue, silver, and gold. For types, a white crystal card with 100 points, a blue crystal card with 500 points, a silver crystal card with 1000 points, and a gold crystal card with 2000 points. At the end of the trial, we will judge the players. A ranking will be made based on the points, and the top 200 will enter the second round of trials. Okay, now the selection time has come. To make it easier for you, after a while, each of you will get a personal crystal cards with information can be used to store crystal cards. At that time, our ranking calculation will be based on the spiritual power values on your personal crystal cards. You are optimistic. After that, the old man took out another one from his body. A transparent crystal card, and then placed the golden crystal card in his hand on the crystal card. In everyone's surprised eyes, the crystal card actually disappeared into the crystal card. At the same time, on the crystal card, a value of 2000 also appeared. Okay, now I announce that this Continental Elite Selection Competition, the Northwest Division, will begin. As the old man finished speaking, each player received a crystal card, which was then dispersed throughout the mountain range under the leadership of the staff. Jason looked around. Everyone he could see looked unfamiliar, and there was no player from the Northwest countries. This made Jason a little surprised by the meticulous arrangement of the Twin Towers. However, conducting trials in the Tian-Ke Mountains of the Lubanar Kingdom may be of some benefit to the players of the Lubanar Kingdom. I wonder how the Twin Towers are arranged. While thinking, Jason silently jumped into the mountains along with the crowd. The Mainland Elite Selection Competition officially begins. The Tian-Ke mountain range is an extremely dense mountain range where spiritual beasts roam rampant and are full of dangers. Step into it. I don't know if they have grown for hundreds or thousands of years. Ancient trees cover the sky one by one. All kinds of weeds are everywhere. There are also thorns. The withered leaves have fallen all over the ground. The ground is covered by your feet. There will be natural sounds on the ground, and the surroundings are densely covered with old vines and weeds. As soon as Jason entered the Tian-Ke Mountains, he felt that the aura of the surrounding heaven and earth was significantly stronger than the outer periphery. Although it was not the same as the Chi'er province of the Salem Empire compared to the secret realm of the spiritual pool, but in the absorption room, people still feel bursts of comfort. This is a good place for spiritual practice. The endless mountains stretch to the end. Looking from a distance, you can feel the insignificance of human beings in front of nature. The Tian-Ke mountain range almost crosses the entire Lubanar Kingdom. It is thousands of miles long and about 700 or 800 miles wide. If nearly 10,000 players gathered together, it would be extremely huge. But once you enter the Tian-Ke Mountains, it is like being thrown into the sea. The few pebbles in it are simply not enough for the Tao. There are a large number of low-level spirit beasts in the outermost 100 miles of the Tian-Ke mountain range. If you go deeper than 100 miles, there are mostly 5th and 6th level spirit beasts. If you go deeper, in the core of the Tian-Ke mountain range, there are even 7th and 8th level spiritual beasts in the area. There once was an Emperor spiritual master who saw an 8th order Emperor-level sky-swallowing beast in the deepest part of the Tian-Ke Mountains. As for whether there was a 9th order holy-level monster in the deepest part of the Tian-Ke Mountains, no one knew. That's clear. The reason why the Lubanar Kingdom is so powerful has something to do with the Tian-Ke Mountains. Although the Tian-Ke Mountains with such a huge group of spirit beasts cannot be compared with the 7 famous forbidden lands on the mainland such as the Cloud Swamp and the Spirit Beast Mountains, it is also a continent. A huge mountain with great reputation. This is an invisible treasure that cannot be transferred by human will. At this moment, the entire mountain forest was completely silent, but Jason also knew that it was full of dangers. His 6th level low-level spiritual consciousness spread out and controlled everything around him in his mind. When the strong man from the Twin Towers took out the crystal card earlier, Jason had already understood the spiritual aura on the crystal card. At this moment, there was no such familiar aura in his range of perception. Jason smiled. He also knew that he had just entered the Tiancay Mountains and would not be able to find this crystal tablet on the outermost edge. Jason immediately stopped staying, and his spiritual consciousness continued to scan all directions, and he slowly advanced towards the depths of the Yangshan Mountains. At the same time, Jason also took out the crystal card on his body and checked the information on it. Selection author, Jason, Northwestern Kingdoms. Points, 0, no ranking yet. As for the ranking list of these 10,000 people, it is empty at the moment. After all, everyone has just come in. It is impossible for someone to gather it so quickly. Find the crystal tablet. A series of information appeared on the crystal card, and the corner of Jason's mouth twitched slightly. 10,000 players, but in the end only 200 people advanced. More importantly, these players are all from all over the northwest of the mainland. Geniuses, any player in a small city like Talon City in the Kingdom of Orlando may be the #1 expert. You can imagine how cruel such a selection is. What's more important is not the strictness of this selection, but the danger involved. The rules of this selection are extremely simple, which is to collect crystal cards to get more points, regardless of how the crystal cards and points are obtained. Before Jason entered the Tiancay Mountains, he was also told that the points on this crystal card, in addition to being obtained by absorbing crystal cards, can also be obtained from those cards in other people's hands. This will definitely result in competition between players. This competition is not only about fighting for crystal cards, but also the possibility of snatching their own crystal cards, and even killing. The entire trial will last for a month. At the beginning, because everyone has no points, fighting may not be frequent. But in the later stage, everyone has considerable points. By then, snatching a player will be more effective than searching for several days now. Finally, in a few days, the fighting will be extremely fierce. Out of 10,000 contestants, after a month of survival trial, how many will survive in the end? Jason didn't know, but he understood that a considerable number of people would sleep forever in Tiancay, Pulse, and die at the hands of spiritual beasts or other players. Let's go to the depths of this mountain range first. The deeper you go into the Tiancay mountain range, the stronger the spirit beasts are. I guess there won't be too many players in it. Let's keep a low profile for the time being, practice a bit, and improve our strength. Giamori thought in his heart as he quickly moved towards the depths of the mountains. Today, Jason has been promoted to the 6th level low-level spiritual master for quite some time. During this nearly half a year of continuous training, Jason has accumulated more and more 6th level low-level spiritual power in his body. It is estimated that it will take in a short time, he will be able to reach the peak of the low-level 6th level and be able to challenge the intermediate spiritual master. It's rare to find such a good training place in the Tiancay Mountains. If Jason doesn't take advantage of it, I'm really sorry for this trial. What makes Jason depressed is that with his current 8th level intermediate emperor body, he can prepare many spiritual potions that can speed up people's cultivation, but Jason doesn't want to rely on too many spiritual potions. It is good that spiritual potions can improve people's strength, but most of them are taken when spiritual masters encounter bottlenecks and have no choice but to take them. Under normal circumstances, in addition to taking some that can speed up the absorption and cultivation of spiritual power, except for spiritual potions, spiritual masters are not willing to use spiritual potions to improve their levels. Any spiritual potion has certain side effects. It can improve a person's strength in a short period of time, but in the long run, it is not beneficial to the spiritual master's practice. Each level of spiritual master's advancement is detrimental to the spiritual master's cultivation. A realization of the essence of spiritual power, an understanding of taking spiritual potions, although you can also advance and your strength can also be improved, but in terms of strength, you are much worse than the spiritual masters of the same level who rely on their own practice to advance. Moreover, the process of understanding spiritual power is completely omitted, making it more difficult for the spiritual master to break through than a normal spiritual master once he encounters a bottleneck in the future. Therefore, the vast majority of spiritual masters usually take some spiritual potions that speed up the absorption of spiritual power and gather spiritual power in the body. However, extreme potions like those that allow people to advance can only be achieved after normal breakthroughs have failed. Considering. Moreover, relying too much on spiritual potions will also weaken people's will, making people rely solely on external things instead of working hard to practice. However, looking at Jason's situation on his mobile phone, Jason's situation is a bit special. Those elixirs that can instantly increase the spiritual power of the human body have no effect at all once they are used on him. This makes Jason extremely confused. By seeing no explanation. In the end, he could only attribute it to the fact that the spiritual god technique was special, and the spiritual power, spiritual potions cultivated through its operation could not be improved. Fortunately, Jason, who practiced the spiritual god art and the line of violent spiritual masters, was not like ordinary spirits. The master can only operate one meridian for cultivation. With dozens of meridians in his body cultivating at the same time, his spiritual power gathering and cultivation speed are much faster than that of a normal spiritual master. In this way, Jason continued his cultivation path all the way in the mountain forest. His cultivation did not necessarily involve finding some powerful spiritual beasts to fight, nor did it mean sitting cross-legged and practicing quietly all day long. Instead, he continued to move forward slowly in the spiritually rich mountain range. The 6th level is a very special level in the entire spiritual master training process. At this level, all spiritual masters are constantly accumulating the spiritual power in their bodies to lay the foundation for entering the 7th level Imperial Spiritual Master. This foundation does not mean how strong the spiritual power in the body must be cultivated, but a kind of perception of the spiritual power of heaven and earth. The 7th level Imperial Spiritual Master is a sudden change in the spiritual master's growth into a supreme master. The integration of one's own spiritual power into heaven and earth is a change in state of mind. Jason was just wearing a gray-brown spiritual master's robe and carrying a black heavy sword on his back, walking step by step in this deserted place. Going through thorns and thorns all the way, Jason was not moving very fast. In the practice of Black Épée sword, he has reached the point where the sword follows his heart, and he can instinctively draw the sword without thinking, returning to his original nature. No more training is needed. What he cultivates is communication with the spiritual power in nature. Jason taught barefoot, you can feel the breath of the earth more clearly, the richness of the earth, full of practicality. When you step on the earth, your heart is as calm as the earth. In the mountains and forests, you can feel the wind blowing. There was a soft feeling on his body. When he closed his eyes, it was as if he was turning into the wind. Just like that, Jason completely entered a special state of cultivation. Sometimes he saw a line in the Tianke Mountains. If there is a rushing waterfall, Jason will practice directly under the waterfall on a whim. Seeing a towering old tree, Jason might lie on the trunk and feel the life of the tree. Seeing deep caves, Jason might walk through them recklessly, regardless of where the end is. Do whatever you want. Jason's heart was closer to nature than ever before. During this kind of practice, Jason temporarily completely forgot the purpose of being in the trial. He just felt nature, felt the spiritual power in his body, and the world between heaven and earth. The communication of spiritual power has become more natural and skillful, and his strength is also constantly improving. Every improvement makes him happy and moved from the bottom of his heart. The path of cultivation is tortuous and long. This road it's very difficult, but it's touching to continue to learn and gain in the process of moving forward. But what Jason didn't expect was that his random progress would also allow him to accidentally get 2 white crystal cards and 1 blue crystal card, earning him 700 points. Time passes day by day, and in the blink of an eye, 10 days of the month-long trial have passed. Stand down. On this day, as Jason was walking forward in the mountains and forests, suddenly, an angry shout came from not far away, and then, several figures slowly appeared from the mountains and forests surrounding Jason. Got up. These were 4 young men holding weapons, walking towards Jason with ferocious smiles on their faces. Strong auras slowly and continuously spread out from their bodies, vertically and wantonly. Friend, please obediently hand over the crystal card on your body. Perhaps we can spare your life. One of the dark, lean young men with the strongest aura grinned. He was holding a bloody curved weapon in his hand. Knife. Jason couldn't help but frown. He had already felt the presence of these people before, but he did not deliberately avoid them. In the previous 10 days, he had also met several players, but those players, they all looked at him fearfully, and then left, but they didn't expect these 4 people to directly surround him. 10 days have passed, and 1/3 of the entire survival trial has passed. Now all the living contestants have more or less points. Even Jason found 2 white ones without deliberately looking for them. The crystal card and a blue crystal card have 700 points, and those players who are specifically searching have even more points. Competition and killings between players have begun to increase now. But Jason didn't care so much. He was dedicated to training and originally planned to wait until the last few days to start grabbing points. But now these people actually found their way to him, so Jason was disrespectful of their points. Friend? Why, do you want us to do it ourselves? We are players from the kingdom of Baiwei. I think you won't like us doing it ourselves. The dark and lean young man couldn't help but sneered when Jason didn't speak. 4. Jason glanced at the 4 people in front of him. To be able to survive till now and rob other players, the points of these 4 are probably higher than mine. Whoosh! Suddenly, a fiery red spiritual light suddenly shot out from the bushes on the side, and at the same time, a fiery red figure shot out of the lightning like lightning, aiming at Jason and attacking fiercely. Do it! At this moment, the lean young man roared angrily, and his body suddenly swelled. At the same time, the blood-colored scimitar in his hand suddenly slashed out, and an earth-yellow blade made a sharp whistling sound, cut through the sky, aiming at Jason and cutting it. These 5 people are all players from the Baiwei kingdom this time. The reason why they exposed the area before was to confirm Jason's identity. Generally, if Jason is also a player from the Baiwei kingdom, they will definitely tell them, but Jason there was no reaction, which proved that he was not a player from the Baiwei kingdom. The spiritual master who was ambushing in the dark took action instantly, and the 4 people surrounding Jason naturally also took action at the same time. Boom! Boom, boom. 3 people from the other 3 directions rushed over at the same time with a sharp sword in their hands. Phew! Call out! Call out! A golden light and 2 green lights shot from a distance. Although they were only facing Jason, once they took action, these 5 people tried their best and showed no mercy. They actually wanted to take Jason's life in an instant. Faced with it, they tried their best to kill Jason. With the opponent's lightning attack, the black heavy sword in Jason's hand suddenly moved at this moment, turning into a black light, and at the same time, his footsteps shook violently. Chong! 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 The sound of 5 clashes of gold and iron resounded in the mountain forest. The black épée in Jason's hand was like a solid shield. All 5 people's attacks were intercepted. This so strong. What kind of defense? The expressions of these 5 people suddenly changed. These 5 people are all geniuses from the Baiwei kingdom, and they have been together all the way. The strongest one is a 6th-level low-level spiritual master, while 3 of the other 4 are high-level 5th-level sect spiritual masters. The name is a 5th-level intermediate sect spirit master. This move was agreed upon by them. 4 people will come forward, and the other will make a sneak attack. Then the 4 people will take action at the same time. Once they take action, it will be a killing move. They will not hold back, and they will kill the opponent immediately with the sword. Relying on this move, they have killed many players. Even the 6th level intermediate spiritual masters, under their tacit attack, will not check for a while and be seriously injured. As for the 6th level low-level spiritual masters and below spiritual masters are basically all missing their heads and can only hold hatred for Zhou Chuan. However, facing Jason, their sudden attack failed. How did they know that even the Dark Knight organization, who was a 7th level low-level emperor spiritual master, the killer also failed to hit Jason? Although the cooperation between the 5 people was tacit, it was still far behind the 2 killers at the level of the 7th level emperor spiritual master. How could Jason be hit? Buzz. 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 Seeing that they had missed a single blow, the 5 players retreated like lightning. 3 spirit rings of various colors floated above the heads of 3 players at the same time, while the other 2 players also had powerful energy blooming on their bodies. The spiritual light. The powerful spiritual power continued to rise, running rampant in the mountain forest, and powerful murderous intentions poured out unabashedly. The 5 people who had missed the lightning-like blow before let them know Jason's powerful strength. These 5 geniuses from the Baihui Kingdom all used their full strength to display their killing moves. Facing the powerful attacks from the 5 people, Jason's eyes flashed. Die. Jason's mind moved. The black épée in his hand was as light as a straw, and he aimed at the player closest to him and struck hard. Get away. The contestant held a long knife and struck at Jason at high speed. The green light on his body was strong, and he didn't know what secret method was triggered. His whole body was extremely fast, and at the same time, his body was still shaking left and right. It seems to have turned into 2 phantoms, making it impossible to figure out which one is the real body and which one is the phantom. Phantom Knife. This is the strongest move of this talented player from Baihui Kingdom. Ridiculous. A sneer formed on the corner of Jason's mouth. With his 6th level low-level spiritual consciousness and powerful observation ability, he instantly determined the opponent's true location. The black heavy sword in Jason's hand suddenly burst out with astonishing momentum, as if the surrounding space was completely frozen for an instant. The black épée struck the young man very simply. The young man wanted to dodge, but he was horrified to find that the surrounding space seemed to be frozen. At this moment, even the sound disappeared. He had nowhere to hide. In fact, he couldn't see anything else. His eyes could only see the growing black épée. He wanted to lift the knife to resist, but at this moment he felt like he was trapped in an endless quagmire. The knife weighed 10,000 kilograms and the speed of lifting was too slow. Poof! The black heavy sword struck the young man's body, and the young man's body from head to toes instantly turned into flesh. Killing him with one blow, the giant sword in Jason's hand kept slashing sideways at another young man. There was fear in the young man's eyes. Whoosh! He actually ran towards the back. Death! Jason shouted in a low voice. Although the young man was fast, he was not faster than the sword in Jason's hand. Poof! Blood spurted out, and a head with a frightened look in its eyes rose into the sky. Blood sprayed out from the upright neck like a fountain, and was thrown several meters away. On the side, the other 3 players roared and released their attacks. 3 powerful attacks, like overwhelming waves, packed with powerful attack power, aimed at Jason and surged towards him. Well done! Faced with the 3 powerful attacks of gold, yellow and red, Jason laughed loudly. Instead of avoiding them, he rushed forward. Boom! Boom! Lu! 3 extremely powerful attacks exploded instantly under the swing of the black heavy sword in Jason's hand, and Jason was like an invincible god of war. They rushed forward in the colored spiritual power storm, swung the black heavy sword high in their hands, and the black light passed in front of the 3 people like lightning. A low muffled hum came from the opposite side, and at the same time there was the sound of metal clashing of weapons against each other. Among them, the metal and fire spiritual masters fell straight down, while the earth spiritual master was completely shaken. He flew out, spitting out a puff of blood from his mouth, and there was a long blood mark on his chest. One of them survived. Jason looked at the dark and lean boy with a hint of surprise on his face. There were 4 corpses next to the forest. Jason's strength made the lean boy's heart tremble, and he kept looking at Jason. Too strong, this boy is too scary. The lean young man's heart was filled with fear. He was the only 6th level low-level spiritual master in the team, and he was also an earth spiritual master. It was because of his extremely strong strength that he managed to survive Jason's previous attack. "Friend, don't kill me," the lean young man said anxiously, and at the same time he threw the crystal card on his body towards Jason. "Here are my crystal cards, and my friends. They are all for you. I am very concerned about this area. He's very familiar with you. If you keep me, you might still be of use. You might still be of use if you keep me?" Jason came to the lean young man with a smile on his lips. Boom! The black heavy sword in Jason's hand slashed down without hesitation. "No." The lean young man's eyes widened, and he suddenly raised the bloody scimitar in his hand, trying to stop Jason's attack, but how could he stop it during the roar of spiritual power? The sword in the hand of the lean young man, suddenly he was thrown directly away, and his whole body was split in half by Jason's sword. "If you don't have the intention to kill me, maybe I will spare your life," but now Jason had a sneer on his lips. At first, he didn't look like killing the other person, but as soon as the other person took action, he was merciless. If it weren't for Jason's strength, he would have died long ago without caring about these 5 people. How could he show mercy to them? Looking at the 5 corpses lying nearby, Jason searched out all the spirit cards on these 5 people with a smile. Now, it's time to see the harvest. Under Jason's control, the values on the 5 crystal cards entered the crystal cards in Jason's hand one by one. Jason looked down. Selector, Jason, Northwestern Kingdoms. Points, 16,500. Rank, 1874. After killing 5 players, the points suddenly rose to more than 20,000 points, and the ranking also jumped to more than 1,000. This growth rate is really fast. Jason couldn't help but sigh. On average, each of these 5 players had 3,000 points, which was really a big number. In fact, although the survival trial in the Tiancay Mountains has a great relationship with strength, luck can also affect a person's ranking. The Tiancay Mountains stretch endlessly. Just like now, if a player can accidentally find 2 golden crystal cards, he will have 4,000 points, which is more than the average points obtained by these 5 people who continue to plunder. And then if you dig into a nook and cranny, you may not be able to find it by other players until the end of the 1-month trial. After all, the Tiancay mountain range is too big. The entire perimeter is 700 to 800 miles wide and thousands of miles long. In a month, we can only search in a small part of it, and only players like Jason who can fly can span most of the trial areas. In this survival trial, there are 10,000 contestants, including about 100 spiritual masters of level 6 or above. However, not all of these 100 people may be able to enter the second round. Many places will still be lost to those who are lucky. Okay, let's take possession of the smart 5th level sect Spirit Master player. Like these 5 people, the lean boy is a 6th level low-level spiritual master. In terms of strength, he can rank among the top 200 out of 10,000 people. When 5 people gather together, they are a force that cannot be ignored. If in a small area, the points on his body would definitely be more than that few, but now, the points of 5 people make Jason worthy of entering the top 2,000. It has only been 10 days since the trial. Everyone has points, but not too many. These 5 people are focused on grabbing, but the Tiancay mountain range is too large. Sometimes, after walking for a long time, you will meet 1 or 2 people. At this time, the points won by snatching may not be more than those players who concentrate on searching for crystal cards. After having a more intuitive feeling about this survival trial, Jason immediately put the black épée in his hand on his back and walked towards the depths of the Tiancé Mountains. There were the 5th and 6th levels of the Tiancé Mountains. Places where spirit beasts appear. Perhaps in addition to the trial, I can also find my own 6th level spiritual ring in the Tiancé Mountains. Jason couldn't help but whisper in his heart. On the outskirts of the Tiancé Mountains, there is a large stretch of temporary buildings. This is a specially built residence for the Lubanar Kingdom. During this month, judges from the Twin Towers and leaders of major organizations are all living here, waiting for the results of the trial. In the open space in front of all the buildings, there is a huge high platform. On the high platform, there is a huge screen with the names, genders, countries, and organizations they represent, and the current trial rankings. All appeared clearly on the screen. The names of nearly 9,000 players appeared densely on this screen that was 10 meters high and 20 meters wide. They were sorted according to their points, clearly and intuitively. There is an information collector on the crystal card of all players. Every 2 hours, information will be automatically released to the camp location, and the rankings of the players on the screen will also be automatically updated based on changes in points. To sort. At this moment, there are more than 8,900 players on the screen, and the remaining 1,100 players gave up in these 10 days. In order to protect the players and give them a choice, all players who encounter danger or are seriously injured and retreat outside the Tiancé Mountains will automatically give up this selection. There is nothing shameful about this. The Tiancé mountain range is full of dangers. If a player is seriously injured while competing for points with other players or fighting with spiritual beasts, they have only one option: quitting. If they continue the trial, they are courting death. The survival trial encourages players to compete for points, but it does not encourage players to kill. After all, these players are all geniuses from all over the Northwest. If the losses are too serious, it will have a great impact on a force. At this moment, the team leaders from all the organizations in the northwest of the mainland gathered on the field in front of the screen, looking at the rankings on the big screen, looking for the names of their country's players. For them, after doing nothing for a month, what they are concerned about is how many players from their own country can squeeze into the top 200 and enter the next round of selection. Now 10 days have passed since the start of the trial, and there is already a huge gap between the high scores and the low scores. Brother Xuanfeng, in this Northwest Elite Selection Tournament, there are quite a few elites from your Ruby Neil Kingdom. At the front of the screen, the strong man from the Twin Towers announced the rules to many players, and smiled lightly at an old man beside him. Make a sound. Protector Carol, lucky, the old man said with a smile. There was nothing unnatural in front of the powerful men in the Twin Towers. This old man is none other than the patron saint of the Rubanar Kingdom, the 8th level senior imperial spiritual master Wind Emperor Xuanfeng. And the strong man from the Twin Towers next to him is the protector of the Spiritual Master Tower. This time in the Northwest competition area, one of the 2 supervisors, Carol, an 8th level intermediate Imperial Spiritual Master. Brother Xuanfeng, you are too modest. This is not like your style. Your granddaughter Dini Sha has reached the level of a 7th level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master at such an age. Not to mention in the Northwest, I am afraid that in the mainland in the elite competition, I can always get a good ranking. This time I enter the Twin Towers trial, I have great hope. On the side, another old man also said with a smile. Master what, you are too polite. Xuanfeng said this, but the smile on his face still clearly showed the joy in his heart. This what is another supervisor sent to the Northwest Division of the Twin Towers. What, an 8th level low-level Emperor Spiritualist from the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower. Although he is only an 8th level low-level Emperor Spiritualist, as an 8th level Xuanfeng, a senior Imperial Spiritual Master, was extremely polite to him, just because this what from the Elixir Master Tower was not only an 8th level low-level Emperor Spiritual Master, but also a 7th level low-level Elixir Emperor. Division. This time, the Lubanar Kingdom, Baihui Kingdom, and the Western Wilderness Tribe are very good. Currently, many of the top 200 players are from these three places. Looking at the names of the players on the screen, What said with a smile. Voice. Master What, thank you for that. On the side, the old man from the Baihui Kingdom and the burly man from the Shihuang tribe also laughed. Of these two people, the old man is the top master of the Baihui Kingdom, Adkins Master, the 8th level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master Duel, and the burly man is the top master of the Western Wilderness Tribe, Temujin. His master is Tuale, an 8th level Intermediate Emperor Spiritual Master. As powerful men at the level of Emperor Spiritual Masters, these two people are qualified to sit at the front of the big screen, sitting together with the two powerful men from the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers hold an elite competition every 10 years in order to screen outstanding talents from across the continent, and the selection for the Northwest Division has not ended yet. Dini Shah, Adkins, and Temujin he has been spotted by the two people from the Twin Towers. Being able to reach the 7th level of low-level Emperor Spirit Master before the age of 30, although he is not considered the top genius in the entire continent, is still pretty good. As for the other players, What and others haven't paid much attention yet. While the team leaders of the major forces looked at the players from their own forces squeezing into the top 200, the team leaders from the northwest countries such as Di-Lin and Kokori did not have any smiles on their faces. With Di-Lin's strength, even though the screen was filled with names, they could find most of the members of their own country with just a few scans of their eyes. Di-Lin, among our northwest countries, only 5 of the top 200 places are occupied now. Kokori smiled bitterly from the side. Let's see, it has just begun. There are still 20 days until the end. It's hard to say. Di-Lin was also very embarrassed. There are only 5 places among the 200 people, which is really ugly for the Northwest Kingdoms, the largest force in the Northwest region. What makes Di-Lin even more depressed is that among the 5 places, there is no one in the Kingdom of Orlando. The Jason he is looking forward to is currently ranked around 8,000 out of more than 8,900 players, and Orlando Leo, another 6th level low-level spiritual master in the kingdom, currently has more than 500 people. However, Claire's performance surprised Dylan. She was currently ranked 278th, not far from the top 200. Refreshed, the data has been refreshed. At this moment, a burst of noise suddenly came from the crowd. The data was updated every 2 hours. At this moment, 2 hours had passed since the last refresh. The leaders in the crowd saw the changes in rankings on the screen are all about finding members of their own country again on the big screen. What, Claire is 189. Looking down from the beginning, Dylan was at the 189th position. Suddenly, he saw Claire and saw that his kingdom finally had someone who entered the top 2. Di-Lin couldn't help but feel excited about the hundreds of players, and he looked down. Leo has also risen a lot, and is now over 400. Di-Lin looked down with joy in his heart, and when he was over 600, he saw more from the Kingdom of Orlando. A 5th level senior sect spirit master level player. Hey, why did Master Jason suddenly reach more than 1,800 people? And Jason's changes also made Di-Lin start to get excited. Is Master Jason finally going to start? Di-Lin murmured in his heart. He was full of expectations for Jason, but in the past 10 days, Jason's ranking has been at the bottom, which made him feel a little depressed. Now seeing Jason's ranking soar, he thought Jason was going to start, and he was extremely excited. Di-Lin didn't know yet that the reason why Jason's ranking soared was because he killed 5 players from the Baihui Kingdom who wanted to snatch his points. At this moment, Jason had no idea of collecting points and kept heading towards Tian-Ke. Trek deep into the mountains. After killing the 5 people with the 6th level spiritual heart that cannot be absorbed, Jason did not stop. Wanting to find the 6th-level spiritual beast and obtain its spiritual heart, he kept heading towards the depths of the Tiancay Mountains. Walk everywhere. As Jason went deeper, 3 days later, Jason had arrived more than 200 miles deep in the Tiancay Mountains. Along the way, Jason still met 2 players. Now that he had met, Jason didn't want to miss it. With their strength, they easily snatched away the points on the crystal cards in their hands. Only this time, Jason didn't kill the opponent, he just snatched the points and left. Here, everyone is a genius of the major forces. If he kills someone, if he fails to kill him successfully and allows the other party to escape, it will leave a legacy of disaster. Although Jason is not afraid, as long as the other party does not have the intention to kill, he will naturally I don't want to kill innocent people indiscriminately. As Jason continued to go deeper, the number of players became smaller and smaller. On the last day, Jason walked for more than a whole day and did not meet a single player participating in the trial. After all, the spirit beasts that appear here are usually 6th-level spirit beasts. The strength of the same-level spirit beasts is usually stronger than that of human spiritual masters, so no player is willing to come to such a dangerous place. On the 13th day of the trial, nearly 300 miles deep in the Tiancay Mountains, the faint smell of rotten leaves permeated the mountains and forests, and the humidity was strong, making people feel uncomfortable all over. Jason walked barefoot among the dead branches and leaves, his eyes calm, and he carried a black heavy sword on his back. Suddenly, Jason's footsteps stopped abruptly. In his perception, a huge spiritual beast was slowly approaching him. The pace of this spiritual beast was extremely heavy. It took Jason a while before he saw the spiritual beast. This is a spiritual beast covered with barbs like iron hooks. Its dark red pupils are staring at Jason. Smelly green saliva drips from between its staggered teeth. It seemed extremely terrifying. Thorn's Earth Dragon? Jason laughed. Jason was very familiar with Thorn's Earth Dragon. Although this Thorn's Earth Dragon is a 6th-order spiritual beast, its defense is very abnormal. It is also a 6th-order beast. There are more spiritual beasts than the lightning leopard that Jason killed in the Lingqi Mountains of Chi'er Province, and the lightning leopard is much faster than the Thorn Earth Dragon. Both have their own advantages, but in terms of strength, the Thorn Earth Dragon is more powerful, because the Thorn Earth Dragon's defense is too abnormal. Its scales are nearly half a meter thick, and the skull that is vital to its head is even more terrifyingly hard. However, there was no trace of timidity on Jason's face. He directly pulled out the black heavy sword behind him and walked towards the thorny Earth Dragon step by step. The Earth-type Thorn Earth Dragon, its spiritual heart seems to be a good choice. Jason thought in his mind. The thorny Earth Dragon is several meters tall and nearly 20 meters long. With such a huge size, Jason seems to be tiny compared to it. Roar! The Thorn Earth Dragon roared at Jason. Jason, however, still held the black heavy sword and walked over step by step with bare feet. Suddenly, Jason's footsteps suddenly increased, and he rushed towards the Thorn Dragon. The Thorn Dragon roared, and at the same time, the dragon's tail suddenly drew hard. As a 6th-level spirit with such a huge body, beast, the claws and tail of the Thorn Dragon are generally the most flexible parts of the body, and its speed is also very amazing. Like a long whip covered with barbs, a black afterimage was aimed directly at Jason's head and whipped, and bursts of sonic booms suddenly filled the air. Chong, faced with such a swift attack from the Thorn Dragon, Jason's black épée blocked the dragon's tail very quickly. However, the force of the dragon's tail twitching was too great, and Jason kicked the ground. With the force of the dragon's tail twitching and the rebound of the ground, Jason jumped up and jumped diagonally towards the Thorn Dragon. When the Thorn Earth Dragon saw Jason in front of him, it immediately opened its huge mouth, revealing a mouth of extremely sinister teeth, and flexibly swooped forward with its head, intending to swallow Jason in one gulp. Huh? This human? The Thorn Earth Dragon was surprised to find that the figure of the human in front of him suddenly swayed and escaped its bite. At the same time, he waved the black heavy sword as lightly as if he was waving straw, and then faced it. The head was hit hard. The thorn dragon did not resist at all. The dragon's tail suddenly flicked out, aimed at Jason, and struck hard, ignoring the attack of the giant sword in Jason's hand. The thorn earth dragon is very confident. Its skull is the hardest part of its body. Boom, the powerful spiritual power scattered in all directions. The giant sword in Jason's hand immediately opened a gash in the skin of the thorny earth dragon's head, and blood spurted out from it. However, when it touched the thorny earth dragon's skull, but can no longer move forward. The dark red eyes of the thorny earth dragon couldn't help but reveal a trace of amusement. Sure enough, the opponent's attack only caused it to feel a moderate amount of pain, and it was not fatal at all. But its dragon tail came to the human's side like lightning, and could definitely break the human into pieces with one blow. However, before the joy in its heart lasted long, fatal blow, a deep voice came from the mouth of the human opposite. Boom! In the stunned eyes of the thorn earth dragon, an extremely terrifying force suddenly burst out from the giant sword on its head, just like a flood bursting its embankment. The astonishing power made the thorn earth dragon's skull feel like an egg. The shell was as fragile as it was broken directly, and the brain matter in the skull instantly became a puddle of flesh and blood. The eyes of the thorny earth dragon instantly turned to death, the originally lightning-like dragon tail also stopped, and its huge body fell directly to the ground. Jason's whole body fell to the ground, and he slashed the head of the thorn earth dragon with another sword. An earthy yellow liquid floated out from the head of the thorn earth dragon that was split open by Jason. This is the spiritual heart of the thorn earth dragon. Seeing the spiritual heart, Jason immediately sat cross-legged on the ground. A trace of spiritual power surged out of Jason's body, guiding the spiritual heart slowly, approaching himself. In fact, most spiritual masters rarely absorb spiritual hearts after reaching the 6th level. In Stern Continent, most spiritual masters cannot withstand the violent power when absorbing spiritual hearts. They generally need to use auxiliary medicines to be able to absorb them normally. It is precisely because the spiritual power contained in the heart of the spirit beast is so violent that it will cause great damage to the spiritual master's body. If you are not careful, not only will you not be able to absorb it, but your life will be in danger. At low levels, spiritual masters can still rely on auxiliary potions to help them absorb. However, after reaching the 6th level, as the level of spiritual masters increases, the gap between spiritual masters and spiritual beasts will also change. At the same time, the danger of spiritual masters absorbing spiritual hearts will become extremely huge. Even auxiliary medicines cannot make up for the gap. And Jason, because he has an 8th level body and a 9th level soul power, dares to try to absorb the 6th level spiritual heart. Jason has absorbed the spiritual heart 3 times before. It can be said that he is familiar with the absorption of the spiritual heart. Generally speaking, as long as the level is the same, the spiritual master only needs to release the spiritual power in his body, and he can obtain a trace of the spiritual heart. Contact and absorb it into the body. But this time, Jason discovered that no matter how hard he tried, he could never establish a strong connection with the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon. However, with Jason's efforts, the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon finally became entered between Jason's eyebrows. At this moment, buzz, Jason's body suddenly shook. Immediately, the golden ball and the cyan ball in Jason's mind started to rotate rapidly at the same time, and the 2 spiritual rings instantly appeared in Jason's head. Suspended from the back of his head, an extremely powerful force instantly came to the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon that Jason had sucked into his eyebrows. With a slight shock, the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon was shaken out of Jason's eyebrows. What's going on? Sensing something strange in his body, Jason couldn't help but show a hint of surprise on his face. The golden balls and cyan balls in his body did not seem to want the spirit of the thorny earth dragon to enter Jason's body. Jason couldn't help but frown. He didn't understand what was happening in his body. He once again established contact with the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon, and then absorbed the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon into his body. Buzz, buzz, this time, the two spheres rotated faster, once again shaking the thorn earth dragon's spiritual heart out of Jason's body. At the same time, a strange force directly came from the two balls. Radiation emanated from the ball and immediately rushed into the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon. In Jason's astonished eyes, the spiritual heart of the thorny earth dragon collapsed directly in front of Jason, turning into countless khaki-rich earth spiritual elements and dissipating in the air. Seeing this situation, Jason was completely dumbfounded. He didn't know what was going on in his body. Even as a 9th-level elixir master in his previous life, he had never heard that a spiritual master's former spiritual ring would exclude him from absorbing spiritual hearts in the future. Could it be that the attributes are wrong? Jason frowned and couldn't help but wonder in his heart. He practiced the spiritual god art and seemed to be able to absorb spiritual hearts of all attributes. The Golden Ring Silver Python King was also an earth element spirit beast. Such a situation has never happened before, but this time then try spiritual hearts with other attributes. Jason made up his mind. In the next 2 days, Jason continued to search for 6th-order spiritual beasts of various attributes deep in the Tiancay Mountains. However, what surprised him was that, without exception, no matter what attribute the spirit beast's spiritual heart was, it could not be inhaled into the body. As soon as it entered Jason's body, it would be absorbed by the golden sphere and cyan sphere in Jason's mind. It was shaken out of the body independently and dispersed at the same time. After trying the spiritual hearts of all 5 basic attribute spiritual beasts, Jason finally gave up trying. Although there are still some special attributes that have not been tried, Jason knows that the problem does not appear in the attributes of the soul. But no matter how much he researched, he couldn't find out what the problem was. Jason, who couldn't figure out why, could only show a wry smile in the end. What is the reason why these 2 spheres repel the 6th-level spiritual hearts? Jason walked slowly in the mountains while constantly thinking in his mind. For ordinary spiritual masters, it is enough to have 2 spirit rings when he was young. Once he enters a high level, even some highly respected family geniuses will not dare to absorb spiritual hearts at will. But for Jason, if he cannot absorb a 6th-level spirit ring, the heart is really a very regretful thing. A powerful spiritual ring skill can greatly improve the strength of a spiritual master. Just like Soul Shock, if Jason hadn't happened to absorb the spiritual heart of the 9-headed fearful phantom demon, after acquiring such a spiritual skill, I am afraid that Jason will never go as smoothly as he does now. If it is because the golden ball found in the Divine Medicine Hall prevents the absorption of the spiritual heart, then why was it that when the cyan ball was absorbed in the Lingqi Mountains, everything was fine? Jason also had some doubts about the 2 orbs in his mind. Generally, after the spiritual heart is absorbed by the spiritual master, all the power will be hidden in the meridians of that level, and these 2 orbs is not a spiritual heart, but it can form a spiritual ring, and it is still suspended in the mind, which makes Jason a little confused. However, as time goes by, Jason also has a better understanding of the 2 spheres in his mind. A certain understanding is that although the 2 spheres come from 2 different places, in Jason's perception, there is a great connection between the 2 spheres. Except for their different attributes, everything else is the same. On the way, Jason walked toward the outskirts of the Tiancay Mountains while thinking in his mind, but in the end, he still didn't understand why. Well, since absorbing the spiritual heart doesn't work, let's start the trial. Jason took out the crystal card and looked at the information on his crystal card. Selector, Jason, Northwestern Kingdoms. Points, 23700. Rank, 5890. After killing those 5 players, when Jason went to the depths of the Tiancay Mountains, he snatched the points of several players, reaching more than 20,000 points. However, the ranking was behind Jason, who needed to find a 6th-level spirit. In the past few days, Beast Spirit Heart has dropped to nearly 6,000 ranks. In this mountain forest, countless players are searching and competing for points every moment. If they are not careful, they will fall behind others. It's been 18 days, and it's time to start. Jason's eyes flashed with strange colors, and he walked through the forest like lightning. At this moment, he was in a forest somewhere in the Tianran Mountains. Ah, it's her, the silver-eyed witch. Why did we meet her? Run away. Boom. Boom. The sound of huge spiritual power explosions continued to be heard in the mountains and forests. A spiritual master in red, a girl with silver eyes in a robe, was fighting with 3 players while holding a giant sword. This girl is Claire, who participated in the survival trial. Although there are 3 people on the other side, the strange thing is that during the battle, the 3 players kept retreating, with fear in their eyes. Boom. As the powerful fire power dissipated, Claire's body was filled with blazing flames, and the giant sword in her hand was aimed at a player's head and slashed down hard. The player roared, and the khaki spiritual light on the long sword in his hand continued to flow, trying to block Claire's attack. However, under Claire's powerful attack, the player could not resist at all. The powerful fire element, the spiritual power, suddenly entered the body, blood spurted out from the contestant's mouth, and the whole person was thrown heavily. Bound by the wind. Besides, another young man shouted. A strange blue cyclone immediately aimed at Claire and swept away. Claire's body flashed, her silver eyes were extremely calm, and she aimed the giant sword in her hand at the cyan cyclone and slashed it down. The powerful spiritual energy flew everywhere, and the cyan cyclone exploded, and then the players were horrified. In the eyes of Claire, the sword blade of the giant sword in Claire's hand hit his body hard. With the crisp sound of bones shattering, the player also lost his fighting ability. I surrender, I surrender. The last young man among the 3 looked frightened and spoke urgently. This place is deep in the mountains. If the 3 of them have lost their fighting ability, once they encounter the spiritual beast, the 3 of them may be in danger. In desperation, the last young man knew that he could not defeat his opponent, so he had to raise his hands and surrender. Look. When the opponent surrendered, Claire stopped attacking, took out all the crystal cards from the 3 people, and then put all the points in the 3 crystal cards into her own crystal card. Selector, Kulea, Northwestern Kingdoms. Points, 238,500. Ranking, 68. Master, Leia will definitely participate in the Continental Elite competition with you. Clea looked down at the information on the crystal card, murmuring to herself, and then flew through the forest again, to search. This silver-eyed witch is too strong. She is at least a 6th-level intermediate spiritual master. Looking at Claire's retreating back, the 3 previous contestants spoke with bitterness on their faces. A few days ago, the 3 of them heard that several teams and individuals were robbed by the silver-eyed witch in this mountain range, including many teams with 6th-level spiritual masters. In the hearts of these 3 people, still holding on to luck, I didn't expect to be robbed in the end. 2 days ago, I heard that 3 top players from the Levi Alliance gathered together. They were 2 6th-level senior spiritual masters and a 6th-level intermediate spiritual master. The Wei Alliance is unlucky here. That's great. The leading young man couldn't help but shake his head. 10,000 players in Kuwu are scattered in the vast Tianke Mountains. It is extremely difficult for 2 to meet. When 3 top players from the same force gathered together, the probability it was so small, but now it really happened. It would be fun if the silver-eyed witch and the 3 Narrowway allies met, said the man who finally surrendered. Why do you care so much? Let's heal our wounds quickly and leave here when we're healed. We really can't stay in this area. The leading young man said. Immediately, the uninjured spiritual master warned, while the leading young man and the other injured player took out healing potions from their bodies and took them to nurse themselves back to health. In the dangerous mountains and forests where computers are visited, they don't dare to be careless in the slightest. In front of the big screen outside the Tianke mountain range, there was another refresh. The leaders of all the forces were staring at the rankings on the big screen. Naturally, Di Lin and others came to the big screen early to search for players from the Northwest countries. What, Claire has actually risen to 68th place? Seeing Claire's name appearing high on the big screen, Di Lin couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. During Jason's absence in the past few years, Di Lin also knew about Claire's growth and that she had advanced to the 6th level of spiritual master. However, he did not expect that Claire's strength would be so abnormal. Kokori and the others were also surprised. Regarding Claire, they also knew that it was because of Claire that Jason and Wayne made a big fuss in the Kingdom of Weiss at the Northwest Wales National Spiritual Medicine Master Conference. In the end, Jason, the third prince of the Kingdom of Weiss, Pollock, was killed on the spot. In the minds of Kokori and others, this Claire is just one of Jason's maids. At first, they were surprised when they saw that she was also one of the players in the Kingdom of Orlando. However, they did not expect that Claire's true strength is actually so strong, and now he is the highest ranked among all the players in the entire Northwest countries. Being able to reach the top 2 digits in the survival trial among nearly 10,000 players is not simply due to luck. Without strong strength as a backing, it is simply impossible. Okaso is also good, now ranked 98th, Sri Lanka has also entered the top 200, and Leo is now over 300, and there is hope. Di Lin and the others all had a smile on their faces, although now the Northwest countries there are still only 5 players in the top 200, but the overall results are not behind the previous year. The key is that as time goes by, several players from the Northwest countries are all stable. Rise, and it has the momentum to continue to rise. This made Di Lin and the others full of confidence. Look at Jason again. Di Lin searched for Jason on the big screen. 975, Master Jason's ranking has risen again, and he has entered the top 1000. It seems that this time, Master Jason has really exerted his strength. Di Lin couldn't help being pleasantly surprised. Since the 10th day, when Jason's ranking suddenly jumped to more than 1,800, Jason's results have basically not changed much. Occasionally, he will gain a little points, but his ranking will drop further and further. In the end, it has fallen to the point of merely 6,000 people. But 2 days ago, Jason's ranking was rising rapidly, and almost every time it was refreshed, it would rise. This made Di Lin feel completely settled. In the heart of Leo, the leader of the Kingdom of Weiss, when paying attention to Okaso and Sri Lanka, he also had a little expectation for Jason. Kokori and others did not know Jason's strength, but Leo saw Jason with his own eyes. King Orlando's palace easily defeated Okaso, who was an intermediate spiritual master. He was also extremely puzzled that Jason's ranking was so low at the beginning, but now, seeing Jason's ranking continue to rise, his doubts have completely dissipated. Here, Master Jason has been too aggressive recently. In less than 2 days, he rushed from the 6,000th place to the top 1,000th place. When Di Lin and Leo understood this, Kokori and others, my mind is full of doubts. Too crazy. The increase in points is almost always changed after refreshing every 2 hours, and it rises by hundreds of places at once. Does it represent a well? It means that Jason can find players to plunder points at all times. It doesn't matter if it is in a small venue, but this is in the Tiankhe Mountains. Kokori and others were completely shocked. Isn't this Master Jason a master of elixirs? The strong wind howled in this mountain forest, blowing the pine waves and swaying like waves in the sea, constantly rising and falling. The lightning flashed behind Jason, and he was like a sharp arrow, constantly flying through the mountain forest. At the same time, spiritual consciousness spread out in all directions like radar ripples, searching for the slightest movement. At this moment, a faint sound suddenly came from deep in the forest, catching Jason's attention. We have prey again. A faint smile appeared on Jason's lips, with a hint of excitement in his eyes. The mountain forest he is flying in at the moment is located nearly 200 miles deep in the Tiankhe Mountains. Here, 5th-level spiritual beasts often appear, and sometimes even some 6th-level spiritual beasts can be found. Those who can come here are all the more powerful players, will be more efficient in survival trials and plundering masters. Whoosh! His whole body instantly turned into an afterimage, flying quickly towards the place where the sound came from. In just a moment, Jason arrived at a valley. Huh? Jason stared. Although the mountains and forests were densely covered with trees, with Jason's eyesight, he could still clearly see the scene in the valley in the distance. That's in the distant valley, a battle was taking place. A spiritual beast covered in flames was constantly attacking two players. The two players were roaring, but their figures were keep retreating. 6th-level flame beast? Jason's eyes fell on the two players, and his brows suddenly furrowed. Based on his strength, it can be seen that the strength of these two players is about the level of 5th-level senior spiritual masters, and they have not even reached the level of 6th-level spiritual masters. Although those who can participate in the survival trial are some the geniuses of the Force can fight beyond the level when fighting ordinary spiritual masters, but the strength of the spiritual beasts of the same level is much higher than that of the spiritual masters. With the strength of these two people, they should not be in this 5th level at all, deep in the mountains where 6th-order spiritual beasts are rampant. Shaking his head, Jason swayed and immediately rushed towards the valley like lightning. Although the 6th-level flame beast was strong, it was nothing to Jason. As a fellow contestant, since he could save, Jason would naturally not be helpless. In the valley, the two players had bitterness in their eyes, gritting their teeth, waving their weapons, and constantly fighting with the flaming beast. As the medicinal power in the body continued to be consumed, the two people became more and more anxious. The reason why they were able to sustain themselves under the hands of this flaming beast for so long was because they all took the spiritual potion and improved themselves. His combat power barely reached that of a 6th-level low-level spiritual master. In addition, this flaming beast didn't take them to heart at all. When waving its claws, it did not display its full combat power. There was a faint excitement in its roar, just because this flaming beast didn't want to do anything for a while. Just kill them. But if the effect of the spiritual potion in their bodies had completely disappeared, they would both be instantly killed by this flaming beast within a few moments. Johnson, the effect of the medicine is almost gone. I'm going to stop this flaming beast. You go first. One of the players yelled. No, Devin, you go first, you are a metal type and faster than me. I will stop this flaming beast, hurry up, otherwise none of us will be able to get away. Another player also roared. No, Devin, go quickly, don't make unnecessary sacrifices. The giant sword in Johnson's hand blocked the attack of the flame beast, creating a chance for another player to survive. No, I have to die. We also have to die together. As time passed, the effect of the medicine in the two people's bodies gradually disappeared. They both felt that the bodies that had been struggling to support were suddenly filled with fatigue. Even the weapons in their hands felt the heavy weight. The people looked at each other and smiled sadly. At this time, even if they wanted to leave, the two of them would never have a chance. The huge flame palm fell down, and the powerful spiritual power overflowed, and both of them had a look in their eyes. A hint of despair. Hi. At this moment, a blue-purple afterimage suddenly appeared in the peripheral vision of the two people. The blue-purple afterimage, like an aurora, instantly passed by the flaming beast in front of the two people. Before the two people could react, come here and see what happened. Ho! A painful roar suddenly came from the mouth of the flame beast in front of them. In the astonished eyes of the two players, the flame palm that the flame beast aimed at them and slapped down suddenly split into two halves, fell to the ground. Bright red blood splashed out from the broken palm, and the eyes of the flaming beast instantly became extremely red. The red eyes stared at the mountain forest not far away, and that the two players looked over involuntarily. They saw a young man with long black hair stretching a pair of blue-purple thunder wings behind his back, holding a black épée in his hand, staring coldly at the flaming beast. Beast! Roar! The flame beast roared, and instantly turned into a fiery red stream of light, aiming at the young man and rushing towards it. At the same time, the flames on the flame beast's body suddenly surged, from the original fiery red to the final one. The white color and intense high temperature actually caused the surrounding air to rise several degrees. Be careful! Johnson and Devon couldn't help but exclaim. This is the flame beast's spiritual skill fire incarnation. Even the 6th level senior spiritual master dare not take it lightly due to the intense heat. Tassel and its front. However, in the horrified eyes of Johnson and Devon, the black-haired boy did not dodge the attack of the flaming beast. The black heavy sword in his hand was raised in a daze, and then fell lightly. Boom! Just when the flaming beast's body was about to hit the black-haired boy, the black épée falling lightly in the black-haired boy's hand landed on the flaming beast's neck first. Pfft! Blood spurted out like a fountain. As a 6th level spiritual beast, even a 6th level senior spiritual master could not break through the defense of the flaming beast. The whole head was struck by the young and fluttering sword. But it was cut in half instantly. The roar of the flame beast suddenly stopped, and its entire body fell heavily to the ground. The flames on its body were instantly extinguished, revealing its dark scale body. This start, the eyes of the two contestants suddenly widened, looking at this scene with surprise in their eyes, their mouths wide open, unable to speak. They were all shocked by Jason's graceful gesture in killing the flame beast. Jason's use of flying skills such as lightning wings showed that he was not a 7th level Imperial spiritual master. The contestants currently undergoing trials in the Tian-Ke Mountains are all geniuses from various forces. They are generally much more powerful than spiritual masters of the same level. But even if the black-haired boy is a 6th level senior spiritual master, this flame, the savage beast, is a 6th level spiritual beast, so it is impossible to kill it so easily. Benefactor, we are Johnson and Devon, contestants from the Lubanar Kingdom. Thank you for your help. Although Johnson and Devon were shocked, they quickly recovered from the shock and the joy of being rescued. They saluted Jason and then spoke respectfully. Jason ignored the two. Thank you, I directly cut the flame beast's head open with a sword, and then put away the spiritual heart. When the time comes, the spiritual heart will be transformed into a spiritual core. The 6th level spiritual core is already considered a stroke. It's quite a fortune. After doing all this, Jason came to the two of them, and then stretched out his hands to Johnson and Devon. This Johnson and Devon, they were all stunned and looked at each other in confusion. You're Jingfeng, Jason said indifferently. Oh. The two of them finally reacted, and handed the crystal card they were carrying to Jason in a state of laughter and laughter. However, they did not feel unhappy at all, because they both knew that without Jason, the two of them would have lost their lives. At this moment, they all died under the claws of the flaming beast. After transferring the points on the two people's crystal cards to his own crystal card, the information on Jason's crystal card suddenly changed to Selector, Jason, Northwestern Kingdoms. Points, 85900. Ranking, 445. You two are 5th level Advanced Sect Spiritual Masters. How could you appear in such a deep place? There are many 6th level Spiritual Masters nearby. The spirit beasts, get out quickly, otherwise I may not be so lucky next time. After returning the two crystal cards to each other, Jason couldn't help but remind him. Yes, we know. The two of them spoke repeatedly and smiled bitterly. If we hadn't heard that there were 3 top experts from the Levi Alliance and the Silver-Eyed Witch in this area, the two of us wouldn't have wanted to go so deep to avoid them. These two people were originally active in this area. With the strength of their senior spiritual masters, the two of them joining forces are already quite powerful. After all, among the nearly 10,000 players in the entire Tian-Ke Mountains, the strength has reached the 6th level of spiritual masters. There are not even 200 players. However, when the two of them were fighting for points together, they learned from others that in this area, there were 3 top players from the Levi Alliance, and there was also an extremely powerful player. The terrifying Silver-Eyed Witch. Afraid that their points would be taken away, the two people immediately went deep into the Tiancay Mountains and wanted to bypass the two sides, but they did not expect that they were targeted by the 6th-level flaming beast here. Silver-Eyed Witch? Jason's expression couldn't help but be stunned. Well, it is said that she is a girl with silver eyes and short blonde hair. There is also a red spot on her face. She holds a big sword in her hand. Her strength is extremely terrifying. All the teams she encounters. There is no one who will not be robbed. I heard that he has at least the strength of a 6th-level intermediate spiritual master. Johnson said. However, although the Silver-Eyed Witch is powerful, she is in the same area as the 3 top masters of the Levi Alliance. If the two sides meet, I am afraid that the Silver-Eyed Witch will be in danger. Where is the League? Of the 3 top masters, 2 are 6th-level senior spiritual masters. No matter how strong the Silver-Eyed Witch is, she is probably no match for her. Seeing that Jason seemed to be interested in the Silver-Eyed Witch, Johnson and Devon immediately told them all the news they had heard. Oh? 2 6th-level senior spiritual masters? Jason's expression suddenly changed and he said, "Where is the area where the Silver-Eyed Witch you mentioned is located?" After getting the specific location from Johnson and Devon, Jason suddenly rose into the sky and flew towards Claire's location. "Let's go take a look too." Johnson and Devon looked at each other and chased after Jason in the direction he was flying. In the dense mountain forest, there are overgrown weeds and spiritual beasts everywhere. This is 100 to 200 miles deep in the Tiancay Mountains. There are nearly 10,000 players in the entire trial, and 80% of the players are active in this area. The sun is shining brightly, reflecting little halos dotted on the green grass. All kinds of green weeds are swaying gently in the breeze. In the mountains and forests, small streams are flowing, and you can see fish swimming in them so clear. Swim. This is a quiet area, with various spiritual beasts passing by from time to time. The snow-white flame rabbit carefully drank a few sips of the stream water and looked around vigilantly. If there was any disturbance, it would quickly flee away. The rich aroma in the Tiancay Mountains, the aura of spiritual power, gives all things an excellent living environment. Players from all over the northwest of the mainland, either in teams or alone, are looking for crystal tablets in the mountains and forests. At the same time, they pay careful attention to their surroundings. Once they find if there is a single player, or a player who can take it, a fight will inevitably occur. Somewhere in the forest, a 4th-level shadow wolf was pacing, its dark green eyes staring coldly at the surroundings, with a relaxed expression, carefully looking for its prey. As a 2 nationality in the Tiancay Mountains, this area is its territory, and it patrols its territory like an emperor. Suddenly, an extremely powerful pressure passed over this mountain forest. Shadow Wolf was originally Proudly's legs shook violently, and the whole wolf body jumped and knelt down, trembling. A blue-purple light passed over the mountain forest like lightning, until the pressure disappeared in the distance. Shadow Wolf stood up again and looked at the place where the blue-purple light disappeared in horror. In the sky above the Tiancay Mountains, Jason made no secret of his whereabouts. His 6th-level spiritual consciousness radiated to the greatest extent, constantly scanning the mountain forest below. The powerful pressure was overwhelming and overwhelming. Arrogant and overbearing. Ever since he learned the news about Claire from the 2 Rubiner Kingdom players, Jason has been constantly looking for traces of Claire in this area, but this mountain forest is it's too big. Although the 2 players have pointed out the general area, even if Jason flies at full speed and keeps searching, it will not be possible to complete the search in this area in a short time. So Jason thought of finding someone. Ask. Now that he decided to find someone to ask, Jason began to pay attention to the players below the mountain forest. Along the way, he also met some players, but he did not stop, but hurried past, even the opponent's crystal card. Jason has no interest in plundering it. If you ask someone, you can't stop him if you see someone down there. If you stop someone at will in the survival trial, the other party will definitely think that Jason is robbing the crystal card, and they will fight to the death, even if he was subdued by Jason. Given Jason's strength, even if the other party said it, he might have deliberately deceived him. Looking for someone in such a large and boundless area may cause Jason to waste a lot of money with a wrong guide. For a long time, Jason didn't want to take such a risk. During the flight, Jason looked down. Suddenly, a scene in the forest not far away made Jason's eyes light up. I saw 5 players chasing 2 fleeing players in the distance, about a few miles away. The opportunity is here, Jason murmured, and then he flew towards the battlefield in the distance like lightning. The 5 players held sharp blades and chased wildly with smiles on their lips, while the 2 players in front ran away like crazy. However, it was impossible to escape the pursuit of the 5 people behind him. This Jarev is so useless. He even robbed his own people. It's really abominable. A young man wearing brown leather armor and with short brown hair growled. His eyes were bloodshot with anger at this moment. Brother, don't get angry. It's important to escape now. Another young man said urgently. This time I run away, I must talk to the adults about it. Is really abominable. The brown-haired man was extremely angry, but his speed still surged to the limit. If you can escape, you can't just let it go. The young man glanced behind him. The 5 people behind him were holding on to the 2 of them, shouting extremely arrogantly. Whoosh! Suddenly, a player chasing behind the 2 suddenly erupted with a powerful wave of spiritual power, and then his speed increased sharply. He immediately circled in front of the 2, and then looked at them with a sneer. No good. The brown-haired man and the young man stopped immediately, and when they looked in other directions, whoosh! 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 The remaining 4 people immediately blocked other directions. Tony, do you still want to escape? A deep voice sounded. The one whose speed increased dramatically before was a strong man with a height of only 1.5 meters. His blue eyes stared at them coldly. Brother, it's over. The young man and the brown-haired man looked at each other, feeling powerless. Both of them were only 5th-level senior sect spiritual masters, and among the 5 people chasing them, except for one who was a 5th-level intermediate sect spiritual master, the rest the 4 of them are all 5th-level senior sect spiritual masters. If they had a head-on fight, the 2 of them would be no match at all. Jarev, we are all players from the Levi Alliance. Are you even trying to steal your own points? Jane's arrogance is nothing anymore. The brown-haired young man glanced around and sneered angrily. After the trial is over, we will never give up easily. The short young man smiled coldly. One of our own? Hey, there are hundreds of people from the Levi Alliance participating in this survival trial, and there are only 200 places for the winner of the trial, so what if they are one of their own? Besides, if the points of all of us are spread out, no one will be able to enter the top 200. If you 2 contribute your points, maybe we will have a chance to enter the top 200. Your Excellency, they will not blame you at all. And we also obey the orders of Boss West and others. Regardless of other forces or those from the Levi Alliance, we will treat them equally and go out. We are not afraid of you too. If you have the ability, you can find West after you go out. Boss, let them ask for an explanation. The 5 people all had sneers on their faces. I'll give you 2 choices. The short young man's rich voice echoed across the world. First, you hand over the crystal card. After we take away the points, we won't embarrass you and let you go directly. Second, if you don't pay, we will beat you 2 up first and then take away your points. Tony, you choose. Jarev, if you have the guts, just come and get it yourself. The brown-haired young man roared, and his entire body turned into a fiery red phantom in an instant, rushing towards the short young man like lightning. The short young man smiled disdainfully, raised the black sword in his hand high, and then slashed at the phantom of flames. The golden spiritual power continued to ripple out. Wherever the black sword passed, the air vibrated like water. Ripples. Suddenly, pale golden light fell from the sky and spread directly, covering an area of 100 meters, forming a huge spherical space, enveloping the 5 surrounding players, including the 2 young brown-haired brothers. Buzz. 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 For an instant, the faces of the 7 Levi Alliance players who were shrouded in pale golden light showed a look of horror. In their perception, they had completely lost contact with the spiritual elements in the surrounding air. At the same time, a wave of the extremely powerful pressure pressed on them, making it almost difficult for them to breathe. A blue-purple figure swept into the field like lightning and stood between the brown-haired young man and the short young man, easily blocking the attacks between the two. Everyone looked up in fear at the figure in the center of the venue. A black-haired young man wearing a gray-brown spiritual master's robe was standing there with an indifferent expression, staring at both sides coldly. "Your Excellency." The short young man immediately said respectfully. "My name is Jarev, from the Levi Alliance. I am the subordinate of the West boss in this area." They formed a knot between Jason's gold elements. Everyone in the world felt Jason's fear. Oh my god, such a powerful pressure. It was even easier to block Tony and I's attacks earlier. The strength of this black-haired boy is at least level 6. Intermediate spiritual master. "Friend, my name is Tony, you are also a contestant, right? I am willing to give you my points." The brown-haired young man also stepped out and looked at Jarev with a sneer in his heart. "Humph, even if the points of our 2 brothers are given to others, they will not be given to you." Jason looked at the players on both sides with a faint smile. "I want to know, have any of you heard of the player Silver-Eyed Witch? Has anyone else seen her in this area recently?" Silver-Eyed Witch? Both sides of Jason couldn't help but be stunned. "My friend, I've heard of the Silver-Eyed Witch you mentioned. She should be within 50 miles south of our mountain forest. Yesterday, I heard someone say that she stole the points there," the brown-haired young man said. Jason was delighted. "It seems that I'm looking in the right direction. As long as we go all the way, we should be able to find Claire." "Sir, you want to snatch the Silver-Eyed Witch's points, right?" "The Silver-Eyed Witch is very famous in this area and has a lot of points. However, the 3 bosses of our Levi Alliance, West, Morrow, and Bennis, this morning were to encircle and suppress the Silver-Eyed Witch. Let's go, Your Excellency is late." The short young man also walked out. Encirclement and suppression? The so-called 3 top masters of the Levi Alliance? Jason's eyes flashed. "You 5, hand over the crystal cards you are carrying and then you can get out," Jason said indifferently. "What?" The face of the short young man couldn't help but change greatly, and he said coldly, "Sir, we are the subordinates of Boss West and the others. Boss West and Boss Morrow are both 6th-level senior spiritual masters. Lord Bennis, he is also a 6th-level intermediate spiritual master. If you take away our points, the 3 bosses will never let you go." The 3 bosses of West and the others had joined forces. Ordinary 7th-level imperial spiritual masters are no match for them. "You need to think clearly," the short young man threatened and was arrogant. Although Jason showed strong force, in the face of interests, the short young man relied on his backer and was unwilling to compromise. "Wordy," Jason said coldly, and the black heavy sword in his hand suddenly floated out. Boom! The short young man had no time to react. He was shot out and hit a big tree with 3 people hugging each other. The whole big tree suddenly collapsed, and a mouthful of blood fell from the short man. A young man suddenly spurted out from his mouth. His whole body twitched, and his eyes looked at Jason in horror. He didn't expect that Jason would not show off his reputation as the boss of West at all, and would attack him without hesitation, and even kill him with one move. He was seriously injured and looked extremely relaxed. Take out your crystal card, I don't want to say it a third time. Jason's tone was cold. He stared at the remaining 4 people coldly. Under the pressure of Jason's powerful spiritual power, the remaining 4 people, his legs trembled like chaff, his eyes were filled with fear, and he obediently handed over his crystal card. After pouring all the points on the 5-person crystal card into his own crystal card, Jason said on the crystal card the information suddenly changed. Selector, Jason, Northwestern Kingdoms. Points, 463,000. Rank, 94. This friend, Tony, the brown-haired young man, and his brother were also frightened and took out their crystal cards. You know, Jarev is the strongest among these 5 people, and what they are most afraid of is this Jarev. But he didn't expect that the strongest Jarev could not even get past a single move under the black-haired boy. You too, let's go, thank you for the information. Jason glanced at the crystal cards in their hands, ignored them, and then withdrew the metal elemental barrier. The lightning wings behind him suddenly stretched out, rushed into the sky, and flew quickly towards the southern mountains and forests. Only Tony and others were left. Snort. Looking at Jarev and others opposite, Tony snorted coldly, and then led his brothers to leave the place quickly. The remaining 4 people did not dare to pursue them. Although 3 of the 4 people and Tony, they are also 5th-level advanced sect spiritual masters, but in terms of strength, the 2 Tony brothers are 1 point stronger than the 3 of them. Previously, the 4 of them dared to pursue the 2 of them because of the presence of the strongest Jarev, but now Jairov Rolf was seriously injured. Although there were 4 people left on their side, they did not dare to have any thoughts about the 2 Tony brothers. Do the 3 people from the Narivi Alliance want to encircle and suppress Claire? In the sky, Jason's eyes were cold and his hands were clenched. His figure was like an aurora, passing over the mountain forest, and at the same time, Claire. A shocking roar sounded over the mountain forest, like a thunderbolt on a sunny day, rolling away into the distance, echoing over the mountain forest for a long time. In the mountain forest, countless spiritual beasts were frightened and ran around in panic. Then, some birds flew into the sky and flew into the distance in panic. The trial players who were searching and plundering points in this area all raised their heads in shock when they heard Jason's roar. He started, with shock in his eyes. Yelling in a forest full of trial players is too attracting attention, isn't it? No matter how strong a player is, he wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. Isn't this guy afraid of attracting some powerful guys? Steal the points from him? All the players in the mountain forest stared blankly at the empty sky, shocked in their hearts. At the same time, they quietly lurked their bodies. Facing such a strong man, they did not dare to risk their points. Who is Claire? Which force is a player? At the same time, a doubt also appeared in the minds of all the players. In this mountain forest, except for some acquaintances from the same force, the players from the major forces did not know each other at all. Some of the experts were given aliases. Naturally, they did not know that the Claire Jason called was the one they had in mind in this area. The silver-eyed witch's expression changed upon hearing this. In front of the big screen outside the trial area, Master Jason has entered the top 100. After the information on the big screen was refreshed, D. Lin and others immediately searched for the players from the Northwest countries in the top 200. When they discovered that Jason appeared in the top 100, D. Lin suddenly said with shock on his face, while Kakori and others on the side were stunned when they found Jason at the 94th position on the big screen. I remember not long ago, Master Jason's ranking was still over 400, right? Leo said with doubts on his face and deep doubts in his eyes. I don't know which player Master Jason has robbed of points, and he can suddenly enter the top 100. The original ranking of the players he robbed should also be higher than his current ranking, right? But it seems to me that the players around this range have not changed much in the past 2 hours. Originally, at the beginning of the trial, one person's ranking rose sharply. Just check the players with the same ranking and see who has 0 points. You can see who has robbed whom. But now the trial has entered. In the last 10 days, it was impossible to see. In order to highlight the fairness of the trial, after the trial enters the last 10 days, when the players rob other people's points, they can only rob other people's half of the points at once. However, after plundering once, 2 people can't enter the game within 1 day. Loot again, and at the same time other players cannot plunder a player within an hour after he is robbed. For example, Jason previously robbed half of Ziggirov's points. Within 1 day, Jason Sen could no longer plunder Jarov, and within an hour after Jason plundered Jarov, Tony and the others were unable to plunder Jarov. The reason why the rules are set like this is to highlight the fairness of the trial. Otherwise, if there is a fight between 3 7th-level Imperial spiritual masters like Dini Shah, Adkins, and Temujin on the last day of the trial, if one party defeats the other party and takes away its points, wouldn't it mean that the losing party cannot even enter the top 200? And if it is 1/2 of the points, then a top player like Dini Shah, even if it is after being defeated, at best they could not be ranked at the top of everyone. The remaining points would be more than enough for them to enter the top 200. D. Lin, Kokori, 6 of your Northwest Kingdoms have entered the top 200 this time. That's a good result. Jason's rapid entry into the top 100 not only alarmed D. Lin and others, but also made some people from other forces begin to pay attention to the Northwest Kingdoms. In previous Continental Elite competitions, the Northwest Kingdoms generally only had 3 or 4 famous players can enter the top 200, sometimes only 1 or 2, and even none of them can enter the top 100. Now this time, not only have 6 players from the Northwest countries entered the top 200, but also 2 people have entered the top 200. Entering the top 100, and Claire, now even more exaggeratedly achieved a good reputation, entering the top 50. This has made some forces begin to pay attention to the Northwest countries. In fact, in terms of comprehensive strength, the Northwest countries are ranked first in the mainland. Among the major forces in the Northwest, they cannot be considered very weak, but in terms of the number and strength of geniuses, the Northwest countries are indeed inferior to the same forces such as the Levi Alliance and the Thad Alliance, and the Kingdom of Lubanar, the Western Wilderness Tribe, and the Baidu Alliance. The 3 top forces of Yu Kingdom are even more incomparable. The reason why the geniuses of these forces are strong is because forces such as the Lubanar Kingdom, the Baihui Kingdom, and the Western Wilderness Tribe basically have only one political power, which can concentrate all the resources of the kingdom on some of the top geniuses, and the Northwest, although the countries are large in area, they are divided into 14 kingdoms and more than 30 principalities. All resources are scattered. Compared with genius, the two are naturally incomparable. Therefore, in comparisons such as the mainland elite selection, the Northwest countries are usually at the bottom among the major forces. Watch it, our Northwest countries will definitely surprise all of you in this Continental Elite selection. Looking at Jason's name on the big screen, D. Lin's eyes flashed, and his expression was firm for just 2 seconds. Within a day, he was promoted from 6,000 to the top 100. D. Lin and others were naturally full of confidence in Jason's strength. Quick, go take a look. I heard that the Silver-Eyed Witch and the 3 Wests from the Levi Alliance met. I don't know which side of the 2 sides has stronger central power this time. It's still useful. Said, it must be the 3 Wests from the Levi Alliance. They are the top experts selected by the Levi Alliance this time. I heard that those 3 people are very powerful. If they join forces, they can fight against the 7th-level Imperial Spiritual Master. Although the Silver-Eyed Witch had defeated several masters at the level of 6th-level Intermediate Spiritual Masters, she was in no way comparable to West and the others. The Silver-Eyed Witch has been running rampant in our area for more than 20 days, and today she is finally going to be unlucky. In a dense forest, many contestants were lurking around, whispering. After more than 20 days of searching, the contestants participating in the trials gradually discovered some rules, such as crystal cards, and they are not randomly hidden in the entire Tiancay Mountains, but are deliberately concentrated in some places, forming areas in the Tiancay Mountains. The surrounding players are all selectors who are active in this area. After learning about the battle between the Levi Alliance and Claire, some players who were nearby suddenly lurked over secretly, watching from afar the battle between the two strongest forces in this large area. In a clearing in the dense forest, a girl wearing a red spiritual master's robe was standing in the center of the clearing, holding a big sword in her hand, and around her body were 3 spiritual masters wearing various colors. The young man, who was convinced, used his horns to surround him. What did I think the silver-eyed witch looked like? She turned out to be such an ugly monster. One of the young men in a red uniform shook his head after carefully looking at Claire's appearance. His face was full of regret. At the same time, he couldn't help but sneered. Silver-eyed witch, obediently take out the crystal card from your body. We may be able to spare you for once, but this moment is your end. In front of Claire, a blonde young man looked at Claire coldly, with cyan light flowing on his body, and said indifferently, "If you want points, come and get them." Claire's cold golden eyes stared coldly at the 3 masters of the Levi Alliance surrounding her, and she said indifferently. She clenched the sword in front of her with both hands, her expression was firm, her thin lips pursed tightly, traces of vague fire spiritual power slowly rose from her body, and the powerful pressure spread out faintly, permeating the air. Between mountains and forests. West, Morrow, since this silver-eyed witch is a fire spiritual master, leave it to me. The red-haired young man Bennis walked forward slowly, with an uninhibited smile on his face. Keep Claire in front of you in your heart. Haha, Benny, let's just watch from the sidelines. Be careful not to capsize the boat in the gutter. West and Morrow laughed loudly. Haha, don't worry, you too. Although the silver-eyed witch is pretty good, she is still far behind me, Bennis. Bennis said disdainfully, but having said that, at this moment Bennis the spiritual power in the body has slowly begun to circulate. His eyes are looking at Claire for a moment, and his heart is not relaxed at all. As the top genius in the Levi Alliance, Bennis also knew that the lion fought the rabbit with all his strength, and his indifferent expression was just his inner strategy to put invisible pressure on Claire. Noisy. Claire snorted coldly. Whoops. Her whole body instantly turned into a fiery red afterimage, like a rocket, rushing towards Bennis like lightning. At the same time, the big sword in her hand was raised high, and the blazing flames rose up, threatening. Wrapped in powerful fire spiritual power, he aimed at the Bennis and struck hard. Haha, you're ugly, what's the point? Bennis laughed loudly, his eyes sharp, his long red hair flying in the sky, and he suddenly raised the sword in his hand. Boom! Strong energy exploded in the mountain forest. Flame cyclones swept around everywhere they went like frightened birds. The rocks in the mountain forest were scorched black and filled with hot air. Amidst the terrifying energy, a low cold snort came from it. It was the voice of Bennis. Come again. Claire's eyes were like lightning, and the sword in her hand was raised high again, and then fell down like lightning. Boom. Lironda was lurking around, and the expressions of the other players who were watching the battle changed greatly, and they felt deeply frightened. At the same time, bursts of muffled sounds came from the flames. Fire body protection. Suddenly, an angry roar burst out from the pile of flames, and an incandescent light flashed, repelling Claire's constant attacks. At the same time, a figure also emerged from there. He suddenly retreated from the flames. Ahem. Under everyone's astonished gaze, Bennis, who had previously looked extremely relaxed and full of disdain for Claire, was now covered in charred black, with a lot of damage on his fiery red uniform, and his face was expressionless. Song-ju, there was even a trace of blood hanging from the corner of his mouth, and the whole person was in an extremely embarrassed state. But Claire, on the other hand, still stood there coldly and proudly, without any scars on her body. What do you think? Bennis gritted his teeth and looked angry. He originally thought that with the strength of his 6th-level intermediate spiritual master, even though the silver-eyed witch was famous, it would be easy to take down the opponent, but he didn't expect that, the fire spiritual power erupted by the other party was like an erupting volcano, extremely ferocious. Even a fire spiritual master like him was unable to resist it. He had already suffered some injuries in the first round of the fight. Buzz. A fiery red spiritual ring suddenly emerged from the top of Bennis's head. At the same time, the shadow of a fire-type spiritual beast with flames burning on its four hooves appeared above Bennis's head. Its dark red eyes, he stared coldly at Claire, who was not far away, with a cold murderous intent. The strong fire spiritual element continued to condense in Benny's body. In an instant, Benny's body was like a dynamite barrel about to explode, giving people a feeling of extreme danger. The roar of the angry lion. An angry roar sounded, and a huge fiery red spiritual power roared out from Bennis's mouth quickly, forming a fiery red shock wave, aiming at Claire, and fiercely as it struck, ripples appeared in the air wherever it went. Opposite her, Claire's eyes suddenly condensed, and the big sword in her hand quickly blocked her face. Boom! Huge explosions continued to sound. Under this terrifying force, Claire's whole body was thrown heavily, knocking down several big trees in a row, and she finally stabilized her body. Haha, silver-eyed witch, look how arrogant you are now. Bennis laughed loudly, and his whole body flew towards Claire like lightning. Claire gritted her teeth, looked firmly, put one hand on the ground, and flicked her tenons hard. Boom! Mud and rocks splashed on the ground, and cracks quickly appeared. At the same time, the whole person flew towards Bennis like lightning, and the two fought again in an instant. Boom! 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 Endless spiritual power burst out, and the fiery red spiritual power continued to sweep across. Wherever it went, the rocks were cracked by the scorching heat. Get away! Claire roared, and the flaming sword struck down instantly. Boom! Beniskzi was thrown away again, his body shook violently, and he spurted out a mouthful of blood. Damn it! Bennis roared, look at this move of mine. Buzz! 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 4 more spiritual rings rose from his head, a total of 5. A fire-type spirit ring, a fiery red spirit ring, formed a huge red halo above Banatha's head. The phantoms of 5 spirit beasts of different shapes and sizes kept flashing above Banatha's head. The powerful spirit ring, the power burst out instantly. As a genius of the Levi Alliance, Bennis possesses 5 full spiritual rings, before the 6th level, which is extremely terrifying. The 5 spiritual beasts, transformed by spiritual power, reflected half of the entire mountain forest in red. Amidst Banatha's roar, the surrounding fire spiritual power entered into Banatha's body crazily, and even the phantom of the spiritual beast transformed by the spiritual power of his head also turned into red airflow and entered Bennis' body. For a time, the spiritual aura conveyed by Bennis reached an extremely terrifying level. The incandescent and dazzling flames flickered in and out between Benny's hands, constantly extinguishing as if alive. In the very center of the flame there was a faint hint of blue, indicating the terrifying high temperature of the flame. Fire, fire, one of the most terrifying flames in the world. Bennis said viciously, with a cold murderous intent in his eyes, silver-eyed witch, since you refuse to surrender, now, just die for me. The incandescent flames, with their faint blue light, seemed to come from the 9 netherworld, and shot towards Claire. Everywhere they went, the air burned, and bursts of explosions erupted. Sound. On one side of the open space, Bennis stood arrogantly with a sneer. This fiery fire was the terrifying flame he created by concentrating the power of all 5 spiritual rings, and combining it with his skills. It is the purest flame in the world. One of them, above many ordinary flames. If Bennissi is promoted to the realm of the 9th level Holy Spirit Master, this fiery fire is enough to burn everything in the world. Even now, it is extremely powerful, even a 7th level spiritual master. Master, in the face of this blazing fire, I dare not take it lightly. Once it hits Claire, the flaming fire will absorb the fire-type spiritual energy in the opponent's body and explode violently. No matter how strong Claire is, she will be killed instantly under the attack of this flaming fire. In the previous battle with Claire, Benny's heart was already filled with anger. At this moment, what he wants is not just Claire's crystal card, but also her life. On the side, West and Morrow also had faint smiles on their lips. Both of them knew how powerful this fiery fire was. Once this fire came out, unless the other party had a stronger flame, otherwise, any fire below the 7th level would be destroyed. As a spiritual master, Bennis is almost invincible. However, after seeing the blazing fire attacking him, Claire did not dodge at all in everyone's doubtful eyes. At the same time, instead of showing any fear on her face, she showed he had a very strange look on his face. The red spots on her face suddenly moved slightly, and at the same time an inexplicable flame suddenly rose from her body. It was the same flame that appeared on Claire when Jason absorbed the immortal fire phoenix to buy his heart. As soon as the flame came out, the flaming fire that was originally drifting towards Claire suddenly trembled, like a mouse seeing a cat, suddenly stopped in midair, and trembled at the same time, trying to break away from Bennis' control and fly away, leaving Claire's body. What's going on? Not far away, Bennis looked at this scene in astonishment, with a look of disbelief on his face. Why is my Yanliehua scared? Impossible, this is impossible. My Yanlihuo is the purest flame in the world. It can burn everything in the world. Even if this silver-eyed witch has other powerful flames, at most it will only be the same as the flames. It's just fighting against each other, it can't make Yanliehua feel scared. Bennis opened his mouth wide, not understanding what happened. Claire stepped forward, slashing down the giant sword in her hand, and struck the blazing fire with one sword. At the same time, the flames on Claire's body suddenly enveloped the blazing fire. In everyone's astonished eyes, Yanliehua, who had been domineering and extremely powerful in the past, suddenly seemed to be impotent, and was invisibly destroyed by Claire's sword. Pfft! The Yanliehua was extinguished, and Benny's body and mind were violently shaken. The energy in his body was instantly disordered. The fire spiritual power in his meridians went retrograde, and his whole body spurted out a mouthful of red and black blood. Phew! Claire raised the big sword in her hand again and aimed at Bennis and struck him in the air. Benny, in the distance, West and Morrow roared angrily. They didn't expect that Claire could break Benny's flames. When they recovered from their shock, when he came back to his senses, he saw this scene. However, at this time, they were all too late. The fiery red spiritual light released by Claire instantly cut through the distance and space and struck Benny's body heavily, creating a huge gap in his chest. Blood, like poured pool water, spattered crazily from the gap in Benny's chest, staining the ground red.